Jin-ho woke up to the sound of his own funeral being planned. The woman sitting across from him, sharp-eyed, wearing a faded university hoodie, fingers dancing across 3 keyboards simultaneously, was supposed to help him fake his death, not actually kill him. Mira didn't look up. Your heart rate spiked. You're awake. Good. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Jin-ho's voice came out rough. The basement server room smelled like instant noodles and burnt electronics. He'd been here for 3 hours, watching her work, before exhaustion had claimed him on her second-hand couch. The kind where Director Lee just activated biometric scanners at your funeral. Myra's accent was crisp, Nigerian English mixed with Korean precision. He's not buying the death certificate. Which means in approximately. She glanced at her phone. For hours, you're going to walk into your own memorial service and get caught by military-grade facial recognition technology. Jin-ho sat up too fast. The room spun. That's impossible. You said the death certificate was flawless. It is flawless. Lee's just more paranoid than I anticipated. Now she did look at him, dark eyes tired but sharp. Or he knows something we don't. Either way, we adapt or you die for real. Your choice. How do we adapt? I make you unrecognizable. Full prosthetics, contact lenses, skin tone adjustment, accent coaching. She stood, moving to a locked cabinet. I've got 4 hours to turn you into someone else. Think you can handle that, Chable boy? The contempt in her voice stung more than it should have. Jin-ho pushed himself off the couch, ignoring the exhaustion clawing at him. I can handle whatever you throw at me. We'll see. Mira pulled out cases of theatrical supplies that looked disturbingly professional. Sit. Don't move. And for the love of God, don't talk unless I ask you a question. This requires precision. But how did they get here? How does a disgraced Korean heir end up in a Nigerian hacker's basement, hours away from attending his own funeral? Let me take you back to where this insane plan started 24 hours earlier, when Jin-ho lost everything except his desperation. Welcome back to Afro-Soul Stories, fam. If you're new here, we create epic thriller stories with romance, action, and plot twists that'll leave you shook. This one's intense, a corporate heir and a genius hacker running the most dangerous con of their lives. Before we dive in, smash that like button and hit subscribe. We're building something special and I want you on this journey with us. Now, let's get into it. The apartment was empty. Jin-ho stood in the doorway of his former penthouse, watching movers strip it bare. Furniture gone. Art gone. Even the custom curtains his mother had chosen before she died were being rolled up and carried away. Director Lee sat in the single remaining chair, sipping Jin-ho's expensive whiskey from Jin-ho's crystal glass. Your father's legacy, Lee said pleasantly. Turns out it was all borrowed. The company, the properties, the offshore accounts, built on patents he stole from his business partner 20 years ago. He smiled, cold and satisfied. From me. Jin-ho's hands clenched into fists. You're lying. Am I? Check the documents yourself. Oh wait, you can't. Because everything your father owned now belongs to me. Including you. Lee stood, buttoning his immaculate suit jacket. You have 72 hours to come up with 800 million Korean wons won. After that, I start taking collateral. Your kidneys should fetch a decent price on the black market. You can't. I can do whatever I want. Your father destroyed my life. Now I'm destroying his legacy. Lee moved toward the door, paused beside Jin-ho. Tick-tock, little prince. 72 hours. Jin-ho stood in the empty apartment for a long time after Lee left. Architecture blueprints were scattered across the floor, his abandoned dreams, the designs he'd worked on before his father had forced him into the family business. Before the inheritance that turned out to be a curse wrapped in expensive paper. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts. Friends who'd already stopped answering. Colleagues who'd turned their backs the moment the scandal broke. Family who'd never existed beyond the corporate facade. One name caught his eye. A contact he'd saved 6 months ago during an investigation into corporate cyber attacks. Mira Hassan. Underground hacker. Reputation for being brilliant, expensive, and absolutely merciless. The kind of person who could make someone disappear. Jin-ho made the call. Itaewon's underbelly was nothing like Jin-ho had imagined. He'd lived in Seoul his entire life, but never descended into this world: cramped alleys, flickering neon, the smell of street food mixing with something darker. He checked the address 3 times before finding the unmarked door. The locks clicked open before he could knock. "You're late." Myra's voice came from speakers he couldn't see. "3rd floor. Don't touch anything." The basement was a tech paradise buried in chaos. Servers hummed along every wall. Multiple monitors displayed cascading code. Empty ramen cups formed precarious towers. A single cot was shoved in the corner, rumpled sheets suggesting she slept where she worked. Mira sat in the center of it all like a queen on a throne made of stolen data. Mid-20s, sharp-featured, wearing clothes that had seen better days. Her eyes tracked him with predatory focus. Park Jin-ho, former CEO of Hanjin Industries. Current fugitive from 800 million Korean won's one in debt. She gestured to a chair across from her. "What do you want?" Jin-ho sat, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "I need to disappear. Permanently. New identity, new life, everything. That's expensive. I can pay." "With what?" "Your assets are frozen. Your accounts are seized. You're worth less than the chair you're sitting on." Mira leaned back, arms crossed. "Try again. What are you really offering?" Jin-ho reached into his jacket, pulled out a small component wrapped in protective cloth. "This. A quantum processor prototype. Korean-made, experimental model from 1998. My father had it in his private safe." For the first time, Myra's expression shifted. She leaned forward, took the component with careful hands. "Where did your father get this?" "I don't know. Does it matter?" "It matters." Her voice had gone quiet. "This was designed by Samuel Hassan. My father. He worked for Hanjin Industries before your father blacklisted him, destroyed his reputation, and had him deported." She looked up, eyes blazing. "Your father ruined my family. And now you bring me his stolen property." Jin-ho's stomach dropped. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't. Rich boys never know anything." But she was still holding the component, fingers tracing its edges. "This is the only prototype that exists. My father's masterwork. I've been looking for it for 3 years. Then we have a deal?" Mira was silent for a long moment, jaw tight. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Fake my death. Make it convincing enough that Director Lee pays out my life insurance, Korean won 2 billion won. We split it 50-50. You get 1 billion won and your father's prototype. I get 1 billion won and a new identity. Life insurance fraud. That's your plan. You have a better idea?" "Several. None of which involve committing a felony that'll put us both in prison for 20 years. Mira set the component down carefully. "You understand what you're asking? Forging death certificates, hospital records, autopsy reports. Staging a funeral that'll fool investigators and insurance adjusters. Finding a body that matches your description. Maintaining the deception for months while the claim processes." "You're saying you can't do it?" Her smile was sharp. "I'm saying it'll cost more than money. If this goes wrong, we both burn. Are you prepared for that?" Jin-ho thought about Lee's cold smile. About his father's poisoned legacy. About the architecture blueprints scattered across an empty apartment. "I've got nothing left to burn." "Then we have a deal." Mira stood, extended her hand. "But we do this my way. You follow my instructions exactly. No improvisation. No heroics. You're a rich boy who's never done anything for himself. I need you to be invisible, and that requires complete obedience." Jin-ho shook her hand. Her grip was firm, calloused from keyboard work. "I can follow instructions. We'll see." The plan was elegant in its complexity. Mira walked him through it over the next 6 hours, screens displaying flowcharts and contingencies. Phase 1, your disappearance. You'll check into a cheap motel in Gangnam under a false name. Leave your phone, your cards, anything traceable. I'll establish your digital ghost, social media going silent, email autoresponders suggesting you're traveling. What about the body? Seoul National University Medical School. They have unclaimed bodies for research. I have contacts who can redirect one that matches your general description. Dental records will be corrupted. DNA samples will be compromised. Not perfect, but good enough for a preliminary identification. Jin-ho felt sick. That's someone's family. That's someone with no family. That's why they're unclaimed. Myra's voice was flat. You want to fake your death convincingly? This is how it's done. If you can't handle the reality, leave now. He stayed. Phase 2. The proof of death. I'll file preliminary reports suggesting you checked into a hospital with acute symptoms. Food poisoning, contaminated water, something aggressive but believable. The body arrives. Gets identified by dental records I've already altered in the hospital database. Death certificate issued. Won't they do an autopsy? Already handled. The medical examiner owes me a favor. He'll note acute organ failure consistent with poisoning, sign off, release the body to your next of kin for cremation. Mira pulled up another screen. Which brings us to phase 3, the funeral. This is where you become someone else. She showed him photos of elaborate prosthetics, theatrical makeup, contact lenses that changed eye color. I'll transform you into a distant cousin from overseas. Someone attending to pay respects. You'll need to be there to authenticate the performance, to show grief, to sell the lie to everyone watching. Including director Lee. Especially Lee. He'll be suspicious. He'll be watching for any sign this is fake. Which is why your performance needs to be flawless. Mira leaned forward. Can you act, Jin-ho? Can you cry on command? Can you play the role of a grieving relative while your own face stares back at you from a memorial portrait? Jin-ho met her eyes. Teach me. They worked through the night. Mira was relentless, drilling him on body language, vocal patterns, emotional authenticity. She'd done theater, apparently, before the hacking. Used acting techniques to teach him how to inhabit a different person. Your cousin's name is Park Min-jun. He's been living in Toronto for 12 years. Works in IT, visits Korea once every few years. You haven't seen Jin-ho in 8 years, but you're here out of obligation and guilt. Guilt for what? For surviving when he didn't. For not calling more often. For not being there when your family needed you. Myra's eyes were intense. That guilt needs to be real. Channel something true. What do you actually feel guilty about? Jin-ho thought about his mother. About the architecture dreams he'd abandoned. About never standing up to his father. I have material. Good. Use it. Around 3 a.m., Mira finally called a break. She made instant ramen, the cheap kind Jin-ho hadn't eaten since university. They sat on opposite ends of her couch, eating in silence. Why do you live like this? Jin-ho asked finally, gesturing to the cramped space. If you're as good as they say, you could afford better. This is better. Off-grid, untraceable, defensible. Mira stirred her noodles. I've been hiding for 3 years. Ever since I left my last job. Which was none of your business. We're committing felonies together. I think it's my business. Mira was quiet for a long moment. I built a network. For people who used it to do terrible things. When I found out, I tried to leave. They said if I ran, people would die. She set down her bowl. So I encrypted everything they had, built a kill switch they don't know exists, and disappeared before they could kill me. What kind of network? The kind that moves money for arms dealers and hides evidence for traffickers. Her voice was hollow. I was good at my job. Too good. And I didn't ask questions until it was too late. Jin-ho understood that weight. My father built his empire on stolen patents and destroyed lives. I spent 28 years benefiting from his crimes without knowing. Or maybe not wanting to know. We're both complicit then. Maybe this is how we make it right. Mira laughed, bitter. Stealing 2 billion Korean wons one makes it right? It's 2 billion Korean wons one that Lee stole first. We're just taking it back. Jin-ho leaned forward. And maybe we use our share to actually help people. Fund the families your network hurt. Clear your father's name. Actually build something good instead of just tearing things down. That's naive. That's hope. There's a difference. Mira studied him in the dim light. You're not what I expected. The reports said you were arrogant, entitled, incompetent. I am. All of those things. Jin-ho met her eyes. But I'm trying to be less of an asshole. It's a work in progress. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. At least you're self-aware. The next morning, phase 1 began. Jin-ho checked into a motel under a false name, paying cash. Left his phone in the room, SIM card destroyed. Mira picked him up 3 hours later in a nondescript sedan. Your social media is going dark, she said, driving through Seoul traffic. Final posts suggesting you're taking a mental health break. Email autoresponder says you're unreachable for 2 weeks. Your credit cards haven't been used since yesterday. You're officially off the grid. What about the body? Arrives at Seoul National University Hospital tonight. Male, late 20s, similar build. Cause of death was accidental overdose 3 days ago. No family, no friends, no one to claim him. Myra's hands tightened on the wheel. I hate this part. Then why do it? Because someone's going to use that body anyway. Medical research, anatomy classes, whatever. This way, at least he has a name. Park Jin-ho. Someone will mourn him, even if it's fake. That's more than he had before. Jin-ho hadn't thought of it that way. The guilt settled heavier on his shoulders. You're going to check yourself into the hospital tonight, Mira continued, complaining of severe abdominal pain. They'll run tests, find nothing immediately concerning, but you'll insist something's wrong. I've already planted records suggesting you've been dealing with digestive issues for months. And then you walk out during the confusion of a shift change. The body arrives shortly after. Gets identified as you. The story writes itself. You felt so ill you came to the hospital, but by the time they realized how serious it was, you'd already collapsed. Acute organ failure. Nothing they could do. It was elegant. Horrible, but elegant. That night, Jin-ho played the role perfectly. Worried patient, scared of what might be wrong, insisting something was seriously off even as the tests came back clean. The doctors were concerned, but not alarmed. Kept him for observation. At 2 a.m., during the chaos of a multi-vehicle accident that flooded the ER, Jin-ho slipped out wearing scrubs Mira had provided. No one noticed. No one cared. One patient among dozens. Mira picked him up 3 blocks away. It's done, she said. The body arrived 20 minutes ago. By morning, you'll be officially dead. Jin-ho watched Seoul pass by the windows. His city. His home. The place where he'd grown up privileged and ignorant. He wondered if he'd ever see it the same way again. Where are we going? Back to my place. You need to stay hidden while I finalize the paperwork and plan the funeral. Mira glanced at him. How are you feeling? Like I just killed myself. You did. The old you is dead. What comes next is up to you. They spent the next 2 days in the basement. Mira worked her magic on databases and hospital records while Jin-ho studied his new identity. Park Min-jun. The cousin who existed in paper only, manufactured with such detail that even Jin-ho started to believe in him. Mira was different when she worked. Focused, brilliant, her fingers flying across keyboards with the precision of a surgeon. Jin-ho found himself watching her more than he should, the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, the fierce intelligence in her eyes, the unconscious grace of her movements. You're staring, she said without looking up. I'm observing. There's a difference. But her lips curved slightly. Observation noted. On the second day, Director Lee's office issued a statement. The tragic death of Park Jin-ho, former CEO of Hanjin Industries. A promising young man taken too soon. Funeral services to be held at Seoul Memorial Hall. He's making it public, Jin-ho said, reading the announcement. Why? Because he wants to control the narrative. Make himself look gracious. The magnanimous creditor mourning his debtor's untimely death. Mira pulled up financial records. He's also already filed the insurance claim. 2 billion Korean wons, payable to your estate, which he controls as your primary creditor. So we wait for it to clear, then redirect the funds? Not quite that simple. The insurance company will investigate. They always do for large claims. They'll verify the death certificate, interview hospital staff, possibly exhume the body if anything seems off. Myra's expression was grim. Which is why the funeral needs to be perfect. Every detail needs to convince them this was real. No pressure. All the pressure. If this fails, we're both going to prison. And Lee will make sure it's a very long sentence. The night before the funeral, Mira began Jin-ho's transformation. It took hours. Prosthetics to change the shape of his nose and jawline. contact lenses that shifted his eye color from dark brown to hazel, temporary skin darkening to make him appear more weathered, more sun-exposed from years abroad. Hair dye, subtle graying at the temples. You need to look like you've lived differently, Mira explained, working with steady hands. Same genetic base, but shaped by different experiences. Stay still. Jin-ho sat in her single chair, forced into absolute stillness as she worked. Her fingers were gentle but firm against his face, applying adhesives and adjusting prosthetics with practiced precision. Where did you learn this? Theater program at University of Lagos. I wanted to be an actress before I discovered I was better with computers. Her breath was warm against his cheek as she leaned close to check a seam. Dreams change. Why hacking? Because acting required me to be seen. Hacking lets me be invisible. She stepped back, examining her work critically. And because my father needed help after your father destroyed his career. Someone had to pay the bills. I'm sorry for what he did to your family. Apologies are worthless. But her hands gentled on his face as she adjusted a final detail. Actions matter. Choices matter. You didn't destroy my father. Your father did. Don't take responsibility for his sins. Then what am I responsible for? For what you do next. Mira met his eyes, her face inches from his. For whether you use your second life to become someone better or just another rich man who takes what he wants. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Jin-ho couldn't name. He could see gold flecks in her dark eyes, smell the faint scent of her soap, feel the heat radiating from her skin. What do you want me to become? He asked quietly. I want you to become someone who deserves this chance. She pulled back, the spell broken. Now, let's work on your voice. You need to sound like you've been living in Toronto for 12 years. They drilled accent work until dawn. Canadian inflections, slight Americanization of certain vowels, the subtle ways English shapes the mouth differently than Korean. Mira was relentless, correcting every slip, pushing him until the voice felt natural. When the sun rose, Jin-ho looked in the mirror and saw a stranger staring back. I don't recognize myself. Good. That's the point. Mira handed him clothes, a modest suit, slightly out of style, the kind someone might wear who didn't attend many formal events. Put these on. We leave in an hour. Jin-ho changed, feeling like an actor preparing for the performance of his life. When he emerged, Mira was in a black dress, elegant and simple. She'd pulled her hair back severely, applied minimal makeup. She looked like a different person too, professional, composed, untouchable. You clean up nice, Jin-ho said. I'm your +1. Your connection to the family. I need to look respectable. She handed him an earpiece, nearly invisible. Wear this. I'll be monitoring everything. If something goes wrong, I'll guide you through it. What could go wrong? Everything. Lee's suspicious. He's bringing biometric scanners. If they're sophisticated enough, they might see through the prosthetics. Myra's expression was tight. We need to be perfect. The funeral was everything Jin-ho had feared. Seoul Memorial Hall was packed with people who'd never cared about him. Business associates, social climbers, the curious public drawn by scandal. His portrait, taken during happier times, stared down at everyone from the altar. Jin-ho entered as Park Min-jun, Mira on his arm. She'd coached him on grief, the particular way loss sits in the shoulders, the tightness around the eyes, the slight disconnect from the present moment. He channeled every regret, every moment of loneliness, every failure. It worked. People nodded sympathetically, offered condolences, told him stories about Jin-ho that were mostly lies. Then Director Lee arrived. He looked immaculate, expensive, every inch the grieving creditor. And he brought 6 men with him, carrying equipment. Biometric verification, Lee announced pleasantly to the room. For insurance purposes. All family members will need to provide fingerprint and retinal scans to confirm identity and inheritance rights. Jin-ho felt his blood freeze. In his ear, Myra's voice came through crystal clear. Don't panic. Stay calm. I'm working on a solution. Lee approached Jin-ho directly, smile sharp. You must be the cousin from Toronto. We haven't met. Min-jun. Jin-ho shook his hand, keeping his voice steady, accent perfect. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Indeed. How well did you know Jin-ho? Not well enough. We lost touch over the years. I regret that. Lee's eyes were calculating, searching for cracks. You came all this way for someone you barely knew? He was family. That means something where I come from. Does it? Lee gestured toward the biometric station. Then you won't mind verifying your identity. Standard procedure. Jin-ho's heart hammered. In his ear, Myra's voice was tense. Stall. I need 3 minutes. Of course, Jin-ho said smoothly. But I'd like to pay my respects first. Surely the scans can wait until after the service. Time is money, Mr. Park. The sooner we process everyone. A woman collapsed near the altar. Chaos erupted instantly. People rushed to help. Someone called for a doctor. The attention shifted entirely away from Jin-ho as mourners crowded around the fallen woman. In his ear, Myra's voice held grim satisfaction. That's my contact. She'll be fine. Panic attack, easily managed. But it bought us time. Move to the west exit. Now. Jin-ho moved smoothly through the crowd, using the confusion as cover. He caught sight of Mira near the entrance, her eyes meeting his for a brief second. She gave an almost imperceptible nod toward a side hallway. He slipped away from the main room, heart racing. The hallway was empty, maintenance access for staff. Mira appeared beside him seconds later. Lee's too smart, she said, voice low and urgent. He knows something's wrong. We need to get you out before he starts actually checking identities against immigration records. How? The building's crawling with his people. I have a better plan. Stay here. She disappeared back into the funeral hall. Jin-ho waited in the shadows, every nerve screaming. 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Then the power went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Confused voices rose from the funeral hall. And in Jin-ho's ear, Myra's voice came through with cool command. I triggered a building-wide electrical failure. Looks like a blown transformer. Everyone's being evacuated to the street. Blend with the crowd and meet me at the vehicle. Don't run. Walk like you're confused but not panicked. Jin-ho followed her instructions, joining the stream of mourners being ushered outside. He spotted Lee arguing with security, clearly furious about the interruption. The biometric equipment was useless without power. He found Myra's sedan 3 blocks away. She was already in the driver's seat, fingers flying over a tablet. Get in, she said the moment he opened the door. Jin-ho collapsed into the passenger seat as she pulled into traffic. His hands were shaking, adrenaline crashing through his system. That was too close, he breathed. That was almost a disaster. Myra's jaw was tight. Lee suspected. If we'd stayed another 5 minutes, he would have caught us. But we did it. The funeral happened. People saw me grieve. The insurance company will. The insurance company now has biometric scanner data from everyone who submitted before the power failed. If any of that data gets cross-referenced with databases, if Lee pushes hard enough, they'll figure out Minjun doesn't exist. She glanced at him, expression hard. We need to move faster than I planned. What does that mean? It means we can't wait for the insurance claim to process naturally. We need to force it through before Lee starts digging deeper. Mira pulled into a parking garage, drove to the lowest level. Which means we're going to break into Ether's master server tonight and manipulate the insurance company's investigation directly. Jin-ho stared at her. That's insane. That's survival. Lee's already suspicious. If we give him time to investigate, he'll unravel everything. Our only chance is to close the loop before he can. She killed the engine, turned to face him fully. I need direct access to their physical servers. Which means breaking into a heavily secured facility in Itaewon. Which means I need you. I'm not a hacker or a thief. No, but you're an architect. Or you were, before your father forced you into the family business. Mira pulled up building schematics on her tablet. This facility has physical security I can't hack remotely. But you can read these plans, identify weaknesses, create an entry point. Jin-ho looked at the blueprints, his mind automatically analyzing load-bearing walls, ventilation systems, access routes. The old skills flickered back to life. There, he said, pointing. This ventilation shaft. It's oversized for the building's needs, which suggests it was added after initial construction. Probably to accommodate additional server cooling. If we can access the roof, we can drop in through the ventilation system. Myra's eyes gleamed. How long would it take? From roof access to server room? Maybe 20 minutes if we move carefully. Security patrols? Jin-ho studied the layout. If their pattern follows standard corporate security, and it should, because that's what's cost-effective, they'll sweep the server room every 2 hours. We'd have a window. Can you do this? Mira asked, her voice intense. Actually do this, not just theorize about it? Jin-ho thought about his empty apartment. About his father's stolen legacy. About becoming Park Min-joon so convincingly that he'd almost believed it himself. Teach me what I need to know, he said. I'll do the rest. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Mira walked Jin-ho through Aether's security systems, what she could hack remotely, what required physical access, what would trigger alarms. He absorbed it all with desperate focus, understanding that one mistake would cost them everything. Aether is the network I built, Mira explained, voice tight. Money laundering, data encryption, infrastructure for some of the worst people in Seoul. I spent 3 years making them untouchable. Why did you leave? Because I found out what they were using my network for. Child trafficking. Murder. Political assassinations. Her hands clenched. I built them a fortress. I didn't ask what they'd do inside it. And the kill switch? Every system I designed has a backdoor only I know about. If I access the master server directly, I can trigger a data cascade that will expose everything, every transaction, every crime, every person they've ever worked with. It'll destroy Aether completely. Then why haven't you done it? Because the moment I trigger it, they'll know where I am. Every enforcer, every corrupt cop, everyone Aether owns will come for me. Mira met his eyes. It's a suicide switch. My last resort if they find me. Jin-ho understood. But if we trigger it while manipulating the insurance investigation, then we create enough chaos to cover our tracks. Lee will be too busy dealing with Aether's collapse to chase us. Mira pulled up more screens. It's risky. Incredibly risky. But it's our only shot. Then let's take it. That night, they drove to Itaewon. The facility was nondescript, hidden among luxury apartments and nightclubs. Jin-ho had driven past it 100 times without noticing. Mira parked 3 blocks away, killed the engine. She'd changed into dark, flexible clothing. Handed Jin-ho a similar outfit. From this point forward, we're committed, she said. No turning back. No second chances. You understand. I understand. Then let's go rob the monster I created. They approached from the north, using alleys and shadows. Jin-ho's heart hammered, but his mind was clear, focused on the blueprints, the plan, the precise movements required. The roof access was easier than expected. A fire escape, a locked door that Mira bypassed in seconds. Then they were on the roof, souls spreading out below them in glittering lights. Jin-ho found the ventilation shaft exactly where the blueprints indicated. Mira produced a powered screwdriver, removed the grating with efficient silence. I'll go first, she whispered. Follow my exact path. If you slip, if you make noise, we're done. She descended into darkness. Jin-ho followed, every muscle tense, hands finding purchase on metal rungs slick with condensation. The shaft was tight, claustrophobic, but he pushed through panic and focused on breathing. They emerged in a maintenance corridor. Mira checked her phone, pulled up security feeds she'd hacked remotely. Guard just passed. We have 90 minutes until the next sweep. She moved forward with absolute confidence. Stay close. The server room was a cathedral of technology. Rows of machines humming with stolen data, cooling systems maintaining precise temperatures, millions of criminal transactions stored in electrical pulses. Mira moved to a central terminal, connected her equipment. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, code cascading across screens. I'm accessing the insurance company's investigation files, she murmured. Planting evidence that supports our narrative. Death certificate verification, hospital records confirmation, witness statements. Making it airtight. Jin-ho watched the door, every nerve screaming. 5 minutes passed. 10. Almost done, Mira said. I'm also accessing Ether's core network. Preparing the kill switch. When I trigger this. Footsteps in the hallway. Jin-ho's head snapped toward the door. Too early. The patrol was too early. Mira. I know. I hear them. Her voice stayed calm, but her fingers moved faster. 30 seconds. I need 30 seconds. The footsteps grew closer. Voices. Multiple guards. Jin-ho moved to the door, pressed his back against the wall beside it. No weapons. No training. Just desperation and the element of surprise. 20 seconds, Mira hissed. The door began to open. Jin-ho threw his shoulder into it, slamming it back into the guard's face. The man stumbled, surprised. Jin-ho grabbed him, drove his knee up the way Mira had taught him during their preparation. The guard went down. But there was a second guard. Reaching for his radio. About to call for backup. Mira appeared beside Jin-ho, something small in her hand. She pressed it against the guard's neck, a taser. He convulsed and dropped. Done, she said, breathing hard. The insurance files are modified. The kill switch is armed. We need to leave. Now. They ran. Back through the corridor, up the ventilation shaft, onto the roof. Jin-ho's lungs burned, his hands scraped raw from the climb. Behind them, alarms began to shriek. They found the guards, Mira said, dropping from the roof to the fire escape. Move faster. They hit the street running, weaving through Itaewon's nightlife crowds. Jin-ho caught a glimpse of their reflection in a shop window, two people fleeing, desperate and wild-eyed. Myra's sedan was where they'd left it. They threw themselves inside, and she peeled out into traffic with controlled urgency. Did they see our faces? Jin-ho gasped. Security cameras caught us. But I looped the feeds before we entered. They'll see static, nothing useful. Myra's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. But they know someone breached the server room. Ether will investigate. Which means we need to trigger the kill switch before they figure out what I planted. How long do we have? Hours. Maybe less. She took a corner too fast, tires squealing. I'm taking you back to my place. You'll hide there while you do what? Face them alone. This is my mess. My network. My responsibility. Jin-ho grabbed her arm. We're partners now. You don't get to martyr yourself. Mira glanced at him, something fierce in her eyes. Partners. Is that what we are? What else would you call this? She didn't answer. Just drove faster. They made it back to her basement as dawn was breaking. Mira immediately went to her computers, pulling up news feeds and dark web chatter. Ether's mobilizing, she said, scanning reports. They know someone accessed the master server. They're locking down operations, moving assets, preparing for an attack. Then we attack now. If I trigger the kill switch, every piece of evidence I've compiled goes public. Every crime, every transaction, every person Ether's ever touched. It'll destroy them completely. Myra's hands hovered over the keyboard. But it'll also expose my location. They'll come for us with everything they have. How long until they figure out we manipulated the insurance investigation? 2 days. Maybe 3 if we're lucky. And how long until the insurance company processes the claim? Normally, 2 weeks. But with the documentation I planted, showing everything as verified and legitimate, could be as fast as 72 hours. Mira pulled up financial tracking screens. If the money transfers before Ether figures out what we did, we can disappear. But if they figure it out first? Then we're dead, and Lee gets everything anyway. Jin-ho moved behind her, hands on the back of her chair. He could smell her shampoo, see the tension in her shoulders, feel the weight of the impossible choice. What if we do both? He said quietly. Trigger the kill switch and disappear in the chaos. Use Ether's collapse as cover. That's what I was planning before I met you. Myra's voice was hollow. Burn it all down and run. Live and hiding forever, looking over my shoulder, waiting for the day they find me. Except now you're not alone. She turned in the chair, looking up at him. The dawn light filtering through her basement windows cast shadows across her face. You barely know me. We've known each other for 4 days. Why would you risk your life for someone you barely know? Because you saved me. Jin-ho knelt beside her chair, bringing them eye level. Because you saw me at my lowest and didn't turn me away. Because you're brilliant and brave, and you deserve better than hiding in a basement for the rest of your life. Jin-ho. Because I think I'm falling for you, he said, the words escaping before he could stop them. And I know that's insane. I know we're in the middle of committing multiple felonies. I know the timing is terrible. But it's true. Myra's breath caught. Her hand came up to touch his face, fingers tracing the prosthetics she'd applied days ago. You're still wearing Park Min-jun's face. Then let me show you mine. He started removing the prosthetics himself, peeling away the false nose, the jawline extensions, the contact lenses. It was painful, adhesive pulling at skin, but he didn't care. He needed her to see him. The real him. When he was done, his own face stared back at her. Younger without the artificial weathering. Vulnerable without the disguise. There, he said. Park Jin-ho. Dead man walking. Falling for a woman who could destroy everything with a keystroke. Mira studied him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, tasting of fear and possibility. Jin-ho's hands found her waist, pulling her closer. She responded immediately, the kiss deepening, becoming something fierce and desperate. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Myra's forehead rested against his. I spent 3 years alone, she whispered. 3 years hiding, running, afraid to let anyone close. And then you show up bleeding desperation and bad ideas, and suddenly I'm risking everything. Is that a complaint? It's an observation. She pulled back, meeting his eyes. I'm falling for you too. Which makes this so much more complicated. Or simpler. We survive together or we burn together. That's not romantic. That's fatalistic. Can't it be both? Mira laughed, the sound breaking some of the tension. You're insane, says the woman who helped me fake my death. Fair point. She turned back to her computers, but her hand found his and held tight. Okay, we do this together. But we do it smart. What's the plan? I trigger the kill switch in stages. Start with the financial crimes, money laundering, fraud, corruption. That'll create immediate chaos, but won't expose the worst stuff yet. While everyone's scrambling to contain that, we wait for the insurance money to transfer. And when it does, we disappear. New identities for both of us, far away from Seoul. I have contingencies in place, passports, accounts, safe houses. We can be ghosts. What about the rest of Ether's crimes? The trafficking, the murders. Myra's expression hardened. Once we're safe, I release everything. Every piece of evidence, sent to every authority that might actually care. Interpol, international media, human rights organizations. I burn them to ash. That'll put a target on your back forever. I've had a target on my back for 3 years. At least this way, I'm shooting back. Jin-ho squeezed her hand. Then let's start shooting. Mira took a deep breath, then started typing. Code flowed across her screens, commands executing with ruthless efficiency. Jin-ho watched data streams light up, connections forming and breaking, systems cascading in controlled collapse. Financial evidence is live, Mira said, voice tight with focus. Uploading to secure servers, sending to investigative journalists, filing automated reports with financial regulators. In about... She checked a timer, 3 minutes. Ether's money laundering operation will be front-page news. They waited in tense silence. Jin-ho's hand never left hers. Then Myra's phone exploded with alerts. News notifications, dark web chatter, emergency broadcasts. Every screen in her basement lit up with breaking news. Massive financial fraud exposed. Seoul's underground banking network revealed. Billions in illegal transactions. It's working, Mira breathed. Holy shit, it's actually working. More alerts flooded in. Government agencies mobilizing. Banks freezing accounts. Corporate executives being arrested. The news showed footage of police raids, frantic investors, talking heads trying to process the scale of the revelation. And buried in all of it, unnoticed in the chaos, was the insurance claim for Park Jin-ho. Verified, processed, approved for transfer within 48 hours. We did it, Jin-ho said, disbelief coloring his voice. We actually. Myra's computer emitted a sharp warning tone. Her expression changed instantly, going from triumph to terror. No. No, no, no. What? Someone's tracking my location. She pulled up security feeds, her fingers flying. They're using the data release to trace the source. I thought I'd covered my tracks, but how long do we have? Minutes. Maybe less. Mira was already moving, grabbing hard drives, disconnecting equipment. They're coming. Ether's enforcers, probably. They know where I am. Jin-ho grabbed her arm. Then we run. Right now. There's too much data here. Evidence I haven't released yet. If they get their hands on it, then destroy it. Wipe everything. I can't. The trafficking evidence, the murder evidence, it's all here. If I wipe it, those crimes stay buried. Myra's face was anguished. I need time to upload it properly, to make sure it reaches the right people. How much time? 20 minutes. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell above. Heavy boots, multiple people. Jin-ho moved to the door, pressed his ear against it. At least 4, maybe more. Professional, coordinated. You don't have 20 minutes, he said quietly. Mira looked at him, then at her computers, then back at him. He could see the calculation in her eyes, the impossible choice. I'll buy you time, Jin-ho said. Lock yourself in the server closet, upload everything you can. I'll hold them off. You're not a fighter. I'm a dead man with nothing to lose. He grabbed the taser she'd used earlier, checked that it still had charge. Besides, they think I'm Park Jin-ho's cousin, remember? They're not looking for me. Jin-ho. 20 minutes. That's all I need to give you. The door splintered open before Mira could argue. 3 men poured through, tactical gear, weapons drawn. Jin-ho moved on instinct, throwing himself at the first one, taser connecting with exposed neck. The man convulsed and dropped. The second man swung his weapon toward Jin-ho. Mira appeared beside him, laptop in hand, and smashed it across the attacker's face. The screen shattered. The man staggered. Jin-ho grabbed the fallen taser, hit the third man before he could fire. 3 down in seconds, but Jin-ho could hear more coming down the stairs. The server closet, he shouted at Mira. No! She ran, disappearing into the reinforced room at the back of her basement. Jin-ho slammed the door shut behind her, heard the electronic locks engage. The closet was designed to withstand exactly this: physical assault, fire, even small explosives. Mira had built herself a fortress within a fortress. More men entered the basement. Jin-ho faced them, unarmed now, breathing hard. Park Min-jun, one of them said, checking a tablet. The cousin from Toronto. Except you're not in any immigration databases. You don't exist. Neither does Park Jin-ho anymore, Jin-ho shot back. What do you want? The hacker. Mira Hassan. Where is she? I don't know what you're. The man's fist caught Jin-ho in the stomach, driving the air from his lungs. He doubled over, gasping, pain exploding through his core. Don't insult me. We tracked the data release to this location. We know she's here. Another punch, this one to his jaw. Jin-ho tasted blood. Where is she? Jin-ho spat blood on the floor, looked up through swelling eyes. Go to hell. They beat him methodically, professionally. Ribs, kidneys, face. Jin-ho tried to fight back, but they were trained and he wasn't. All he could do was endure, buying seconds, minutes, time for Mira to work. Through the haze of pain, he heard her voice in his ear, the earpiece, still functioning. 60% uploaded, she whispered. Jin-ho, I'm so sorry. Hold on. Please hold on. He couldn't respond, couldn't do anything but curl into a protective ball as boots found his ribs again and again. Then the beating stopped. Director Lee stepped through the broken door, immaculate as always despite the chaos. He looked at Jin-ho with cold satisfaction. Park Jin-ho. Back from the dead. How biblical. He crouched beside Jin-ho's broken form. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? The cousin who appeared from nowhere? The death that was too convenient. You got your money, Jin-ho gasped. I got nothing. The insurance claim is being held pending investigation of fraud. Which means you cost me 2 billion Korean wons won and humiliated me in the process. Lee's smile was vicious. But you gave me something better. You led me to her. He gestured toward the server closet. Mira Hassan. Ether's ghost. The architect who betrayed us. She's in there, isn't she? Hiding behind her precious encryption. She's gone. You're too late. Am I? Lee pulled out his phone, made a call. Bring in the cutting equipment. We're opening that door. In Jin-ho's ear, Myra's voice was desperate. 80%. I need 5 more minutes. Jin-ho, please. He couldn't give her 5 minutes. Lee's men were already bringing in industrial cutting torches. But he could give her something else. She's not in there, Jin-ho said, forcing himself to his knees despite the screaming protest of his body. The closet's a decoy. She's already gone. Out through the ventilation system while your men were beating me. Lee's eyes narrowed. You're lying. Am I? Check your exterior cameras. She'll be 3 blocks away by now. If she's not in there, then we have no reason to keep you alive. Then I guess you'll never know where she transferred the evidence files. The ones that aren't uploaded yet. The trafficking records, the murder evidence. Everything that's still sitting on encrypted servers only she can access. It was a gamble. A desperate, insane gamble. Lee studied him for a long moment. Then gestured to his men. Check the perimeter. If she's running, find her. And someone get this idiot medical attention. He's no use to us dead. The men dispersed. Lee remained, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating the search. In Jin-ho's ear, Myra's voice cracked with emotion. 95%. Jin-ho, you beautiful idiot. Just a little longer. Lee paced the basement, frustration evident in every movement. His phone rang. He answered, listened, then turned to Jin-ho with cold fury. My men found the ventilation exit sealed from the inside. She's still in that closet, isn't she? Guess you'll never. Lee's gun pressed against Jin-ho's temple. I've waited 20 years to destroy your father's legacy. I can wait another 20 seconds for the cutting torch to breach that door. But you? You die now. Jin-ho closed his eyes. Thought of his mother. His abandoned architecture dreams. Myra's fierce eyes and brilliant mind. Do it, he said quietly. I died 4 days ago anyway. This is just making it official. Lee's finger tightened on the trigger. An explosion rocked the basement. Not from the server closet, from everywhere at once. Every computer Mira owned, every server, every piece of equipment, detonating in a cascading series of thermite charges. Heat and smoke filled the space, blinding, choking. Jin-ho threw himself sideways as Lee's gun fired, the bullet missing by centimeters. He scrambled toward the server closet through the chaos, hearing Lee screaming orders, men coughing and stumbling in the smoke. The closet door opened. Mira grabbed his arm, pulled him inside. Behind her, her computer screen showed a single word, complete. Everything's uploaded, she said, voice hoarse from smoke. Every crime, every piece of evidence, sent to every authority I could reach. Ether's finished. And us. We run. Now. She led him through the back of the closet, a hidden exit he hadn't known existed, leading to Seoul's underground maintenance tunnels. They ran through darkness, Myra's phone flashlight barely cutting through the black. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit echoed through the tunnels. They emerged in a subway maintenance area. Mira pulled Jin-ho into a service elevator, hit a button that took them up to street level. They stumbled out into Seoul's morning rush, 2 people covered in soot and blood, barely standing. I have a safe house, Mira said, leaning heavily on him. Gangnam. Different name, different identity. We can hide there while the insurance money transfers. And then we disappear. Together. They made it to the safe house, a tiny studio apartment under a false name, clean and anonymous. Mira collapsed the moment they were inside, exhaustion finally claiming her. Jin-ho cleaned their wounds with shaking hands, watching news alerts flood Myra's phone. The evidence dump was everywhere. Ether's crimes splashed across every outlet. Arrests happening in real time. The entire organization crumbling under the weight of exposure. And Director Lee's name was on every list. Corruption, extortion, conspiracy. He'd be arrested within hours. Jin-ho's own death, the fake funeral, the insurance fraud, was lost in the chaos. A footnote in a much larger story. 2 days later, Myra's phone pinged with a notification. Funds transferred. 2 billion Korean wons. They stared at the number, disbelief warring with exhaustion. We did it, Myra whispered. We actually did it. Jin-ho pulled her close, felt her heartbeat against his chest. What now? Now we split the money. You take your billion and disappear. I take mine and do the same. New identities, new lives, new. No. Myra pulled back, looking at him. No, I'm not disappearing without you. I'm not spending the rest of my life wondering if you're safe, if you're happy, if you're alive. Jin-ho cupped her face, thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. We're partners. You said so yourself. Jin-ho, we barely know each other. I know you saved my life. I know you're brilliant and brave and you risked everything to bring down monsters. I know when you work, you bite your lower lip. I know you take your coffee black because you learned to like it that way when you couldn't afford cream. I know you have nightmares about the things Ether did with your network. He leaned his forehead against hers. I know I want to spend whatever comes next learning everything else. Myra's eyes shimmered with tears. That's the most impractical thing I've ever heard. Is that a yes? That's a you're insane, but I'm insane too, so maybe we deserve each other. She kissed him, soft and sure. Yes. Yes, you stubborn, impossible man. Yes. They left Korea 3 days later. New passports, new names, new lives. The money was split into offshore accounts, carefully laundered through legitimate investments. They landed in Lagos. Myra wanted to see her father's grave. To tell him his name had been cleared, his work vindicated. They stood in the cemetery together, Jin-ho's arm around her shoulders as she cried for the first time since they'd met. He would have liked you, she said finally. He always believed in second chances. So do I. They stayed in Lagos for 6 months. Lived in a small apartment in Victoria Island. Started a consulting firm, legitimate this time, helping small businesses with cybersecurity. Used their skills and experience to actually build something good instead of tearing things down. Jin-ho discovered he was good at client relations. At explaining technical concepts to non-technical people. At using his abandoned architecture training to design security systems that were both effective and elegant. Myra discovered she liked teaching. Training younger hackers in ethical practices. Showing them how to use their skills to help instead of harm. They were happy. On the anniversary of Jin-ho's death, they were sitting on their balcony watching Lagos's sunset when Myra turned to him with nervous energy. I have something to tell you. Jin-ho's heart skipped. What? I'm pregnant. The world stopped. Then restarted, brighter and more vivid than before. You're weird. We're having a baby. Her hand found his, fingers lacing together. I know we didn't plan this. I know we're still figuring out who we are to each other. But Jin-ho pulled her into his arms, kissing her with everything he had. I love you. I love you, and I love that we're bringing a life into this world. A life that won't be poisoned by our father's mistakes. Myra laughed, crying, holding him tight. Our child won't inherit corruption or guilt. Just possibility. And really weird stories about how their parents met. Let me tell you about the time I helped your father fake his death. And then we committed insurance fraud together and fell in love. They laughed until they cried, until the absurdity and beauty of their story overwhelmed them both. 6 months later, Jin-ho held his daughter for the first time. She was perfect, dark hair, bright eyes, tiny hands that gripped his finger with surprising strength. What should we name her? Myra asked from the hospital bed. Jin-ho thought about second chances. About redemption and hope and building something beautiful from broken pieces. Amara, he said. It means grace in Igbo. And immortal in other languages. She's our grace. Our immortal hope. Myra's smile was radiant. Perfect. They raised Amara in Lagos. Built a life that was messy and complicated and absolutely real. Jin-ho never forgot who he'd been, the arrogant heir, the desperate fugitive, the man who'd faked his death. But he learned to be someone new. Someone better. On their daughter's 5th birthday, sitting in the home they'd built together, watching Amara play with presents and friends, Jin-ho turned to Myra. Do you ever regret it? Everything we did. Myra was quiet for a moment, considering. I regret building Ether's network. I regret the harm my code enabled. But everything that came after? Meeting you, exposing them, building this life. She took his hand. Not for a second. Even though we're technically dead and living under false names? Especially because of that. We're not running from who we were. We're choosing who we want to be. And who's that? Partners. Parents. People trying to leave the world better than we found it. She kissed him softly. That's enough for me. Is it enough for you? Jin-ho looked at his daughter, at the woman he loved, at the life they'd built from desperation and crime and impossible choices. It's everything, he said. Years later, Director Lee died in prison. The news barely registered in Lagos, just another headline in a world full of them. Ether never recovered. The evidence Mira released destroyed the organization completely. Dozens of arrests. Hundreds of victims freed. Systems dismantled. The insurance company eventually declared Park Jin-ho's death fraudulent. The 2 billion Korean won's won was supposed to be returned. But the money had already been carefully distributed to victims of trafficking, to families destroyed by Ether's crimes, to organizations fighting corruption. Anonymous donations that made real differences in real lives. Jin-ho and Mira kept enough to build their consulting firm. To raise their daughter. To live simply and honestly. It was enough. On their 10th anniversary, they stood on the same balcony where Mira had told him about her pregnancy. Amara was sleeping inside, surrounded by books and toys and love. Do you think we're good people? Jin-ho asked quietly. Mira considered. I think we're people who did terrible things for survival and then spent the rest of our lives trying to make up for it. Does that make us good? I don't know. But it makes us honest. I can live with honest. So can I. They stood together as Lagos's lights twinkled below, two ghosts who'd found their way back to life, two criminals who'd discovered redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but building a different future. Together. Always. So, what did you think? Jin-ho and Mira went from strangers to partners in crime to parents, building a legitimate life. From a basement in Seoul to a balcony in Lagos. From desperation to hope. But here's the real question. Did they deserve their happy ending? They committed insurance fraud. They faked a death. Yes, they exposed Ether. Yes, they used the money to help victims. But does that justify the crimes they committed to get there? Drop your theory in the comments. Are you team they earned their redemption or team crime is crime regardless of outcome? And let's talk about the ethics. Mira built a network that enabled trafficking and murder. Jin-ho benefited from his father's stolen empire for years. Do a few months of good deeds balance out years of complicity? Or is redemption more complicated than a simple equation? What about their daughter? Growing up with parents living under false identities, built on a foundation of crime? Is that fair to her, or are they setting her up for disaster? These are the questions that make stories interesting. Because real life isn't clean. Real morality is messy, contextual, and deeply personal. Here's what I want you to do. Hit that like button if this story grabbed you, if you felt the tension in that server room, if your heart raced during the funeral, if that pregnancy reveal hit you in the feels. Subscribe to Afro-Soul Stories if you want more intense thrillers like this. More impossible choices, more morally gray characters, more romance forged in fire. And comment, I read every single one. Tell me, what scene hit you hardest? Did Jin-ho and Mira earn their happy ending? Rate this story 1 to 10. What kind of story do you want next? Revenge thriller? Corporate espionage? Psychological drama? Next week, I'm dropping another story. Different characters, different stakes, same intensity. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. If you made it this far, thank you. Your time matters. The fact that you spent this time with Jin-ho and Mira, that you cared about whether they survived, whether they deserved redemption, whether love born from crime can become something pure, that means everything. Share this with someone who loves thrillers, complex characters, or just really good storytelling. Help us grow this community. I'll see you in the next story. And hey, keep those comments coming. I want to hear your theories, your hot takes, your passionate defenses, or brutal criticisms. Peace out.